There's a rumor going around that the last DLC for Black Ops 4 and the final map for the Aether storyline will be a remake of Call of the Dead. We've had a lot of remakes in the Aether storyline over the past several years, so there are plenty of people who are against the idea of DLC 4 being a remake. Because it worked so great for them the last time, why not do it again? But I'm against it for a different reason. It's because Call of the Dead sucks.
Shut your mouth, you mediocre clarinet player.
Mediocre?
Hyperbole aside, Call of the Dead isn't a terrible map. There are a lot of people that love this map, some even have it in their top 5. While I can occasionally have fun on this map, there's a lot of glaring problems with it. Some of these problems are commonly addressed, while some go completely unaddressed. So I'm gonna go through some of the biggest problems with this map and explain why, in my opinion, Call of the Dead is terribly overrated. But before I do that, I'm gonna point out some of the best aspects of the map to show that I'm not horribly biased. Because this map does have some great aspects. 2 of the best training spots, the inside and outside of the lighthouse, are on this map. This was also the first time we had a celebrity cast or an Avenged Sevenfold song in a zombies map, both of which would become staples in games to come. But the best part about this map is the Easter egg reward. Rather than having a one-time reward, you're rewarded for completing the egg from that game onward. It gives the player a good reason to complete the Easter egg beyond just bragging rights and a bit of gamer score. I'm not the type of person who wants to complete Easter eggs, in fact the only one I've completed is Origins, but Call of the Dead is an Easter egg I've considered completing because there's a real reason for the player to do so. I haven't done it yet though because there's a lot of RNG, but there's at least a reason to do so. Why we don't have a feature like this in the newer maps is completely beyond me. But now that I've pointed out some of the best, let's point out some of the worst with Call of the Dead. Number 1. George Romero. Yeah, I bet you didn't see this one coming, did ya? George Romero kills this map for a lot of people. He is widely considered to be one of the worst parts of this map and one of the worst boss zombies of all time, and for good reason. This bullet sponge spawns in on round 1 with 250,000 hit points. That's if you're playing solo. In a 4-person match, he spawns in with over 1 million hit points. But he should have more health because if there are more people in the game, he'll be too easy to kill. Sure, having more people shooting at him will make him easier to kill, but that's assuming your teammates actually bother shooting him. How many public matches have you been in where you are the only one trying to take down George? For me, the few times I play in public matches, it's been every single time. Because why waste your ammo trying to take him down when you can do all the work and they can get the same reward? So have fun whittling down George's 1 million health points all by yourself, and remember, this is what you wanted. Thankfully, you can just ignore him, right? Wrong. He slowly follows you around the entire map at all times from the moment he spawns, oftentimes getting in your way. If you so much as hit him with a stray bullet, he goes apeshit and starts sprinting at you. You then have to drag him into the water, which takes away your sprint, slows your movement to a grinding halt, and puts you in a corner with all the zombies coming right at you, because almost every area with water is a dead end. Also, it's still round 5 while all this is happening. Having fun? Because I'm not. I wanted to play a game of zombies, but instead I'm babysitting a giant man. But what makes this worse is that George makes Deadshot completely unusable. And keep in mind, this was the first time we had seen Deadshot as a perk. And you can't use it because if you do, chances are you're gonna auto-aim right to George's head, and when you do that, this happens. One of the most overshadowed problems with George is his screams. Usually when you shoot him, he'll let out an angry scream to let the player know that he's angry and is gonna start attacking him. This is good information to give to the player, however it also slows down the player to a grinding halt, and allows the zombies to easily down you without any way for you to fight back. It's especially difficult if you don't have Jug yet. So don't shoot George. Oh, if only it were that easy. Aside from the fact that you can auto-aim to him at any given moment if he's around a zombie, and aside from the fact that he walks in front of your shot from time to time, there are times where he just randomly screams. There's no way to prevent him from doing this, and it often happens at the worst possible time. Even if he doesn't down you, it slows down the game to a grinding halt for a couple of seconds for absolutely no reason. And a lot can happen in a couple of seconds. A couple of seconds is the difference between surviving the round or going down or having the game end entirely. Second of all, if you do survive, the seconds add up really fast. They can be a thorn in your side, especially if you're trying to go fast or you need to get to the other side of the map to, say, revive a teammate or reach Pack-a-Punch. Number 2, the map layout. The layout of Call of the Dead is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the zip lines throughout the entire map can help you get from one side of the map to the other very quickly. On the other hand, setting up on the early rounds is a complete nightmare. Let me take you through a complete game so you can understand how many times you have to go out of your way to reach something you need. You spawn into the map and you need to turn on the power to start setting up. The power is on the right side of the map, so you are forced to go to the right side of the map every single time. Let's compare this to other maps like, say, Kino der Toten. You can turn on the power by going either right or left. You're not restricted by the layout of the map. But you keep going and you get to the boat. Where's the power? At the very top of the tower of the boat. What else is up there? Absolutely nothing other than a mystery box location. If it spawned there, great. If not, there's no reason to ever go back up there ever. And because George is likely following you up the stairs along with a potential horde of zombies, the only way for you to escape is to use a zipline to get back to the spawn room. But no big deal, it's not like you're trapped up there. Now that the power's on, you're going to want to get Jug. Where is it? At the very far side of the boat. So you have to go all the way back up the boat, keep going to the front deck this time, and you get there, you get Jug. Hopefully you don't go down because getting back to that spot during the middle of the noun is going to be almost impossible. But that's a problem for later. You have Jug now, maybe some good weapons if you've been buying them along the way. So far, so good. All is well, but you want to get to the lighthouse so you can get other perks like PhDs, stamina up, speed cola, and also because the 2 good training positions are at the lighthouse. How do you get there? Well, if you're going to train outside the lighthouse, you're going to want to keep this door here closed. So if you want to get there and keep that door closed, you have to go all the way back to spawn, open up the entire other side of the map, and then finally, you can train outside the lighthouse. Is there not a more roundabout way of traveling the map? Sure, you can open that door, but that means that outside training position is going to be very, very difficult to train at. So you're essentially forcing yourself into the inside of the lighthouse. And if you open the door in between the inside of the lighthouse and the outside front of the lighthouse, both of those training spots are going to be incredibly difficult. So you have to meticulously manage which doors to open and which to leave closed. That's a lot of pre-planning for playing a map. And while it's not too difficult, once you get the swing of things, it's unnecessarily restrictive. And that brings us to problem number 3, Pack-a-Punch. So after training outside the lighthouse, getting all of your perks and potentially some good weapons, you've decided it's time to Pack-a-Punch. Should be easy, right? Absolutely not. So how do you Pack-a-Punch? Well, it's available right as power is turned on. Oh, that sounds convenient. Where is it? Well, the question isn't where is it, but where and when it will spawn. See, once power is turned on, it can spawn in one of 3 locations. It can either be in the spawn in a pool of water by Quick Revive, a pool of water by Jug, or just behind the lighthouse by Stamina. If you've been paying attention, you'll know that these are the 3 corners of the map, so they're as far away from each other as they can possibly be. So we're off to a good start then. The lighthouse will shine a light on the Pack-a-Punch when it does spawn. So at least there's a bright side, you'll at least know where it is. But then we get to the second part of that question, when will it spawn? You see, Pack-a-Punch doesn't just spawn when power is turned on. No, that'd be too simple, convenient, and consistent for Call of the Dead. Instead, the map will randomly decide when and where to spawn Pack-a-Punch. Sometimes it won't spawn for several rounds, potentially leaving you in the dust. You could stop at the end of a round and wait for it to spawn, but again, that slows down the game to a grinding halt when you just want to wait for a feature that's easily accessible on every other map. It's also completely RNG and out of your control. Well, at least when it spawns, you won't have to wait for it anymore, right? You know, you're funny. I wish I was funny like you. I'd get more views if I was funny like you. No, what actually happens is that Pack-a-Punch spawns, and then after a short amount of time, it disappears, and you have to do that all over again. Hopefully it spawns at the end of a round because there's no way you're going to be able to drop everything and Pack-a-Punch mid-round, and that's assuming you have the area where Pack-a-Punch can spawn unlocked when it spawns. Nothing says quality fun like RNG. Number 4. Fog rolling in. Call of the Dead is a pretty map, and it's a pretty open map visually. There are places where you can see the entire map from one spot. It's a good looking map, especially for the hardware it's on and the time it came out. But then Treyarch had to ruin it. So they added fog. This is another part of the map that even the people that love Call of the Dead dislike. Does anyone like fog in zombies at any point? Why is this a feature that keeps coming back? No one likes fog. PSA to every developer. No one likes fog. Stop adding it. Fog sucks in pretty much every map. And Transit gets a lot of beef for its use of fog. But I would actually say the fog in Call of Dead is far worse than the fog in Transit. I know that's a bold statement for some of you, but hear me out. The fog in Transit actually had a purpose. It was covering up the unfinished areas of the map that didn't look very good on the hardware the map was on. It's not great, but it at least had a design purpose behind it. What was the design purpose behind the fog in Call of the Dead? Sure, it makes things hard to see from a distance, but when do you ever need to see things far away? It's not particularly dense enough to make the zombies hard to see, so all it does is make the map look gray and ugly and miserable. What's strange is that the fog only shows up some of the time. The map will be foggy for a couple of rounds, and then the weather will clear up. But why not just have it clear all the time? It doesn't run any differently when the fog is in the area. It's not a hardware thing where it's potentially frame saving. Why is this here? Another idea would be to have the map foggy at the start, but once power is turned on, it kind of clears up. That way the fog could be used to set a mood and make a creepier atmosphere, kind of like what World War II did with, what was the name of that map? Kind of like what World War II did with The Darkest Shore. That could have been cool, but instead we just have a good looking map that's gray and ugly for time to time for really no reason at all. Number 5. Playstyle Accommodation. Earlier I talked about how the setup for this map is largely the same between games because of the map layout. This can make the early rounds tedious on repeated playthroughs, but it can be forgiven if the later rounds can be completed in multiple different ways. Except Call of the Dead has precisely 2 strategies for high rounds. You can either train outside the lighthouse, or you can train inside the lighthouse. If you're bold, you can make do in the starting room, but the rest of the map is almost completely unviable. You also might notice that camping is involved in neither of those strategies. Not only is George and his massive health bar gonna make camping pretty much impossible, there's no promising camping location anywhere on this map. In Call of the Dead, you have to train, and you have 1 of 2 places, or maybe 3 to train, depending on how you feel about the starting room. And that's it. So why is that a problem? Because it makes the map pretty one-dimensional. Having a multitude of strategy gives the game depth and replay value. It can also make the map more accessible to players who don't like one strategy for one reason or another. To make things clear, let's compare Call of the Dead's 2 or 3 strategies to some other zombies maps. Shadows of Evil is my favorite map in zombies, and one of the reasons it's my favorite is because there are so many different ways to play the map. If you like to train, there's several different training locations throughout the map. There's outside the Ruby Rabbit, inside and outside of the Pack-a-Punch room, the Canal Perk location if you have the Apothecon Servant. Right there, that's 4 training locations compared to Call of the Dead's 2 or 3. And if you prefer to camp, you can camp in either one of the 3 tram stations, we'll count this as one because they're all essentially the same, or behind the door in the Watergate district if you keep this door closed and use the train to go around. That's 2 compared to Call of the Dead 0. Combined, that's twice as many strategies on Shadows of Evil compared to Call of the Dead. But you know, Shadows of Evil is a newer map, the standards are maybe a little bit higher, so we'll compare it to an earlier map to Call of the Dead. We'll compare it to Der Riese. Der Riese has 4 good training spots. There's the spawn room, the furnace room, the power area, and just below the catwalk. Already a map that's nearly 2 years old when Call of the Dead was released, has more viable strategies. But then you remember that on Deriz, you could camp on the catwalk. In other words, a map from World at War, when zombies had no idea what was going on, what it wanted to be, or anything like that, had more viable ways to play than a map with a fully fleshed out Easter egg and a dedicated team of people working on it. Do you see the problem yet? Number 6. Bad Wonder Weapons. The last thing I want to talk about with Call of the Dead is the Wonder Weapons. They're pretty bad. And yes, I do mean Wonder Weapons plural because there are 2 of them, and Treyarch got neither of them right. I'm gonna start with what is easily the worst of the 2, the VR-11. This Wonder Weapon turns the zombies back into people. When the zombie is now a person, the person immediately runs into water and carries some of the zombies with them. Not all of them, just some of them. So we're already starting off on a bad foot here. The shots from this Wonder Weapon are already less powerful than a Monkey Bomb. In fact, I would say a Monkey Bomb is better. At least a Monkey Bomb won't take up a weapon slot. And if you want a specific weapon to distract the zombies, you can just upgrade a crossbow, and it has more ammo than the VR-11 anyway. This Wonder Weapon can also get George to leave the map if you upgrade it, but only for 1 round. Just 1 round. He'll come back the next round and you have to use it again. So he can leave for another 1 round. I think I'd rather just spend 5,000 to get a gun that I can kill him with, because at least I would get something that way. I would get a free perk and a potential death machine and or wonder waft from the Easter egg reward. Plus then I have a gun that I can use to kill those zombies with. Why would I use this weapon? It's also worth noting that if you upgrade the weapon and use 3 whole shots, it can kill a zombie and potentially a few around it. It is a 3-shot on any round, but the weapon has so little ammo that it isn't worth using it for that reason. However, it does have 1 use, and that's killing zombies at higher rounds. This is the only weapon on Call of the Dead that has an infinite damage. So the high round strategies use this awful weapon to get through high rounds. No one has made it to round 100 on Call of the Dead legitimately, because this Wonder Weapon is all they can use, and it sucks. Just use the other weapon then. Well, I'm so glad you asked, because the other Wonder Weapon is the Scavenger. At first glance, it seems really cool, a sniper rifle that shoots high-powered explosive shots, and that's a super cool concept. And then you realize the shots don't explode on impact. Oh, when I say high-power explosives, I mean it's no longer a one-hit kill beyond round 40, if not earlier. With the Scavenger, PhD is a must, which does restrict your perk choice, but chances are you're gonna use this anyway, so it's not too bad. However, the real problem, like a lot of things, lies with George. If you're using this weapon, it's only a matter of time before George finds himself too close to the weapon's extremely huge blast radius. If you go through an entire round without pissing off George using the Scavenger, you are an incredibly lucky man. This Wonder Weapon and George on the same map is like water and vinegar. As awesome as it is, it's too dangerous to use around him, and its inability to one-shot at high rounds doesn't justify using it. I wasn't originally going to talk about the ray gun because it's on every map, but it's the best Wonder Weapon on this map, hands down. But the problem is that the upgraded M1911 is probably better if you want to get out of a corner. And you can fire more than 1 shot with it, so if you're in a corner, you're probably going to have a better time getting out with the M1911. You also don't have to worry about your box luck either, because both of these weapons have an extremely low chance of coming out of the box, whereas you start with the M1911. If you get the Scavenger out of the box, I recommend you just take out a large chunk of George's health and then switch to something safer. Or you can just use it for fun, I'm not going to stop you. In conclusion, Call of Dead is a pretty map made ugly by fog that restricts the player's playstyle into 2 similar paths for both setting up and high round games, has 2 almost unusable wonder weapons, one of the worst boss zombies in the entire franchise, and an awful pack-a-punch system. And it's being remade for DLC 4. Hopefully Treyarch makes some sweeping changes with the remake, otherwise I think we're gonna be in for a bad time. But those are just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours in the comments. Did you agree or disagree? Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more, and hopefully I'll see you in future videos. Bye.